Welcome, everybody. I'm excited to have Ewan Downie with me here today as for another special guest episode here. Before I start into it with him, though, I just want to remind you, as always, about disclaimers, right? Just consider this to be a general disclaimer. This is not financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please check full disclaimer in the YouTube notes below. But I am excited, right? I mentioned Ewan Downie is with me here today. Ewan is an accomplished company builder and entrepreneur with more than 25 years experience in the mining sector. In his extensive career, Mr. Downie has participated in several gold and base metal discoveries and has been awarded accolades to reflect this success, including the 2003 recipient of the PDAC Prospector of the Year Award. Ewan, I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on my show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, excellent. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So, nowhere else like the start to begin. Nowhere else to begin like the start, I suppose. But maybe, do you mind just filling us in on your history and maybe how did you start out in the sector?
I started in the mining industry, basically was born into it. My father was a geologist, and I, throughout my young life, moved from mining town to mining town, so to speak, and got to know the industry really from working summer jobs in the mining field, doing various odd jobs that were available mostly for my father. And then in university, I was taking business, and the government offered a student venture loan, and I applied for one of those to start my own mining business. And so I started a little company right out of university. We did service exploration for mining companies, and years later, I decided that I was going to start my first public company, and that was called Wolfden Resources. Wolfden Resources was taken over in 2007 by Zinifex out of Australia. It was really a base metal company. The PDAC award that you mentioned was a major discovery we made in Wolfden that ultimately resulted in the company being taken over. We spun out the gold assets at that time to create Premier Gold. Premier Gold, we had up until 2 years ago, we were running it, which included some of the current Nevada projects. 2 years ago, Premier was taken over, and as part of that takeover, we spun out the Nevada assets, acquired new assets, and created what is now i-80 Gold. So that's kind of my foray through the industry.
Yeah, I think it's got to be the most successful spin-out of a spin-out I've seen, I guess, anyway, right? But your i-80 these days. Maybe just to expand a bit. I mean, do you just want to, because again, the part of this is to talk about i-80, which I think is a very exciting company, and you have a lot of exciting projects. But also, more of also like an educational aspect, I suppose, for investors. Maybe do you just want to reflect on your earlier years and just discuss maybe successes and failures that you came through, and then also maybe more importantly than that, the lessons you learned from those experiences?
I think one of the first lessons when I started a public company, my father was, I guess, a bit reluctant to work with me on starting a public company because I think his quote was 99.9% of junior mining companies fail. So that was really the first thing I found. The first project we had was an interesting showing that we discovered by prospecting. The first hole we drilled intersected economic grades. We were pretty excited, and then we drilled all around that first hole, and we didn't hit anything more economic. It was all more or less low grade material that wouldn't justify ever building a mine. So the first property failed pretty quickly, and we had to make another acquisition of property and properties. And through the years, we did various projects, most of which didn't work out. And then my father was one of the chief geologists at Kennecott, which is part of Rio Tinto, and we approached them about a project they had in the Arctic, and it was an existing deposit. So instead of looking for a new deposit, it had 3 known deposits on the property. And we thought, well, at least if we make this acquisition, we'll have actually a tangible asset. We will have metal in the ground. And that was kind of our first foray into making acquisitions from bigger companies who often hold large land packages or significant land packages in various significant camps, but really don't do work on them. They just sit on them. And it was that property that we did a airborne geophysical survey, identified a pretty major target that we drilled, and we discovered what was called the West Zone that was in, I guess, in that year, I think that was in 2001, would have been one of the biggest discoveries of the year in the mining sector. So, and since then, we acquired what is now our Cove property from Victoria Gold and Newmont. We acquired our autoclave facility from Nevada Gold Mines. We acquired the Ruby Hill and Granite Creek projects from Waterton. So we've really used the acquisition strategy to acquire known projects that put us ahead of the curve. Instead of saying, hey, we got a showing or we got an airborne anomaly, we're going to build a company on the showing, because I think I found out early on that more often than not, like my father said, the projects don't work. If mining was easy, there'd be mines all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of different threads there that I would want to pursue with you. I think though maybe where you had started there, that idea of coming into this sector knowing eyes wide open that you're going to probably have more failures than successes, but it's acquiring the knowledge, acquiring the contacts, acquiring the understanding, so that your hit rate exceeds your fail rate, I suppose, right? So that you can make a go of it. I want to talk about i-80 because I think you and I had a decent chat here a couple of days ago, and kind of one of the narratives for me that emerged was understanding, not all developers are equal, understanding that the details, the devil's in the details, I suppose, right, in terms of how to assess and analyze development companies specifically, which is kind of where we're going with i-80 here today. But before we maybe jump into that, do you want to talk about i-80, right? Like kind of say, I said it kind of flippantly, but a spin out of a spin out, but it's obviously, for anybody who knows it, is a very strong story. Do you just want to talk about i-80, I suppose, in terms of how it came to be?
Sure. We were actually planning to do the spin out of i-80 before the takeover of Premier. So we had embarked on spinning out the Nevada portfolio that we had within Premier. Premier, we had an operating mine, the Mercedes mine in Mexico, and we had the very large Greenstone project in northwestern Ontario. There was a joint venture partnership. That project is now in construction by Equinox, who took us over. So it's a very large operation. It's a project we acquired from Barrick back in 2007 for $3 million, and is now a $1.5 billion construction project. So I think it was a pretty big success story in my career, taking it from a project that was a historic mine into what is going to be a major open pit operation. So as we were building out that company, we had some challenges with our joint venture partner. We were actually in court, and the project was stalled, and we'd just been negotiating to get the autoclave facility that we now have from Nevada Gold Mines. And we thought that creating a US only gold producer based solely in Nevada would be a very strong company in the future. And especially with the fact that we were going to own an autoclave. An autoclave would allow us to process ore. So we have our own facility to process gold mineralization. And often those to construct these facilities cost in the billions of dollars. So like the Greenstone mine that Equinox is building, but this was an opportunity to acquire an existing permitted built facility. And we're just looking to restart it for the purposes of our projects. We are underground on our Granite Creek project, which is the first of our underground mining operations we're working on building. We are underground now and drilling underground, getting ready the Cove project to be our what will actually be our third project that we actually expect to bring online. And we're just finishing the permitting to go underground at Ruby Hill. So in 2024, we expect to have 3 underground projects underway. So it's a pretty large endeavor, but these are known, very high quality, very high grade deposits that are all open for expansion. And once we come out of this in the next several years, as we build out these projects, we're expecting to be the largest US only, so pure play US gold producer. And we trade on the New York and the Toronto Stock Exchange. So being on the New York, we're really focusing on the US investor and the fact that we will become the largest gold producer based entirely in the United States, and also with the fact that our company has over 14.5 million ounces in gold resources. So we're not just starting out with a little deposit. We have very significant asset behind us, and that will lead to hopefully decades of production going forward.
Yeah, 14.5 million ounces is nothing to sneeze at. You have obviously articulated well that you have a history of success in this industry, and I thought that kind of connects back nicely to our previous point, is that if you can find individuals, and this is part of it as an investor, don't try too hard trying to reinvent the wheel. If there are people that you're aware of in the industry, such as yourself, that have a long history of success, don't try to outsmart yourself or outsmart the market. Sometimes it makes sense just to follow winners, right? And then I think that obviously you have a track record that speaks to that. You certainly have. In terms of i-80, it's ambitious, but it's based on a heck of a lot of knowledge and a heck of a lot of certainties, right? We kind of talked about, again, off air previously, that the uncertainties are what kind of can sink projects, or the question marks, or the unknown unknowns. I think that's Ashcroft from 20 years ago that said that. But that those are where you find your money and make your money. But I guess, why don't I ask you about, you're kind of nosing into, giving us a pitch on i-80. It's a great story. It's a compelling story. Maybe, do you want to just kind of give us your traditional pitch and bring up your slideshow if you like?
So looking at a few slides, I think you look at our front page of our corporate presentation. We're a made in the USA company. We are an explorer, we're a developer, and we're a producer. So we are a gold producer, and we should see significant increase in our production over the next several years. Just go through a few key slides. In terms of pure play US companies, there's only 3 of us that are purely focused on production of gold in the United States. We are the largest of those 3, and we expect through our production growth to be significantly larger in terms of market cap in the future. We operate 100% in Nevada. Nevada is, according to the Fraser Institute, which does an annual ranking of countries and states, et cetera, for mining attractiveness, Nevada is ranked number 1 in both investment attractiveness and policy perception. So we are in what I consider to be the safest jurisdiction for mining in the world. We've assembled a tremendous team. Our president, chief operating officer, Matt Geely, was formerly the executive general manager of the Cortez district. That's the 2nd largest mine of Nevada gold mines, the Barrick Newmont joint venture in Nevada. Andy Cole, who works with our group, was formerly the general manager of Goldstrike, the largest of the Nevada operations. And behind them, we built a tremendous team. We operate 100% in north central Nevada, where the Carlin and Battle Mountain trends occur. These trends are likely the most productive gold district anywhere in the world. All the blue dots are the Nevada Gold Mines operations. They produce over 3 million ounces of gold from this picture. i-80 is the 2nd largest holder of gold and silver resources in north central Nevada. So this picture, and in the next several years, we expect to be the 2nd largest producer. We have 2 existing processing facilities in the state. And as I mentioned, in all categories, we have over 14.5 million ounces of gold in resource, which puts us in the top 3 in the United States, and top 3 in Nevada. We have more gold resources than large companies like Kinross, Anglo Gold, SSR Mining, Coeur, and we have significant upside potential. We are advancing the discovery we made at Granite Creek called the South Pacific Zone to development. It's a very high-grade discovery we made only about 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago. And from discovery to actually producing out of that zone, we expect to be just over 2 years. We also last year discovered a high-grade zone gold zone at Ruby Hill called the 428 zone that we're not even drilling right now. because we made such a significant polymetallic. That's a lead zinc discovery called Hilltop at our Ruby Hill project that is really a focus for us going forward. Our grades, especially our underground grades, rank amongst the highest you'll find of any gold deposit in North America, especially development stage projects. 2 of our 3 projects are have resources in excess of 10 grams per ton. And gold mines, underground gold mines in excess of 10 grams per ton are actually pretty rare. The Granite Creek operation right now is the first one we're ramping up. We are underground at Cove, and next we expect to begin development at Ruby Hill. And ultimately, these 3 underground mines will feed one processing complex. So it's kind of a hub and spoke model. And our 5-year target is to have production in excess of 400,000 ounces a year, whereas this year we're only going to see about 30,000. So very significant growth in our production going forward. As I mentioned, one thing that I think gives us a competitive advantage in the state is the fact that we have existing processing facilities. So it makes the transition from explorer, developer to producer much easier than you typically find. And this site also includes an autoclave, which is a very rare processing because it processes refractory ore, which is when you have gold encapsulated in sulfides. And there's only 3 companies in the United States that have this type of facilities, and we're one of those 3 companies. So to me, that's what the big competitive advantage that i-80 has in the market. Ruby Hill also has a processing facility. We have a major open pit project that we're looking at in the future. We've got a refractory underground deposit called Ruby Deeps that we're advancing. We made the Hilltop discovery, and recently we took over our next door neighbor, Paycore, to acquire their FAD deposit, which is an extremely high grade polymetallic project immediately to the south of our company. We're defining multiple zones of high-grade mineralization. Just a few examples, in the upper Hilltop zone, we get up to 60 grams per ton gold, 908 grams per ton silver, and in other holes up to nearly 40% lead zinc. So it's extremely high-grade material. The value of the rock, in situ value of the rock, is often in the thousands of dollars per ton, which is almost unheard of in our industry. And every deposit we have discovered so far along Hilltop is still open for expansion. So we are just really started this discovery, and we think it's going to yield positive results for a long, long time. The major thing we're working on here at Ruby Hill is putting in the underground infrastructure to mine both gold. So the Ruby Deeps and 426 zones are gold, and base metals, the Blackjack, Hilltop, lower east and upper Hilltop zones are all, and FAD are all polymetallic base metal deposits. So this will be an underground operation that we build out of the bottom of the pit to define mineralization at depth. Granite Creek is our most advanced project. Just like we're looking to do at Ruby Hill, we have 2 portals out of the bottom of the pit. This is a historic pit. We're actually looking in the future to have a pit expansion here, but that's not a near-term target for us. Granite Creek is situated right beside Turquoise Ridge and Twin Creeks that you see here on the current slide. Turquoise Ridge is the 3rd largest of Nevada gold mines operations. Between Twin Creeks and Turquoise Ridge, these mines have about 50 million ounces of production and resource, and we sit right along the same structure to the south. And we have both open pit, very high open pit grades at 1.4 grams M&I and 10.4 grams M&I in our underground deposit. We have developed this underground project. We are mining currently on a couple of the levels, and what we're working on is driving the infrastructure to depth to access the South Pacific Zone discovery we made. And the South Pacific Zone is wide open. You can see the 2 step-out holes along strike here at depth are 10 and 15.7 grams per ton gold, completely open. Some of the deeper holes beneath these zones are 17 grams and 63 gram material. This deposit is completely open for expansion. It's fully permitted. It's in operation. very high grade, and we expect it to be a cornerstone asset for our company for many years to come. Then the second mine we're developing is Cove. This is a picture of the underground development. This was essentially a discovery or a reinterpretation that led to the discovery of a very significant deposit that we made in Premier, and we're now building it. So one of those proud moments as a developer, when you take something from a conceptual idea to production, is pretty rewarding. We're drilling from underground. It's basically a flatline deposit and represents one of the highest grade development stage projects in North America. Has a grade of almost 11 grams per ton, and our drill program that we're carrying out is demonstrating grades in excess of this grade regularly, and we expect that this is actually one day going to be the major operation. But of the three projects, this is the third one we expect to come online. Even though it's the second one we've put in underground infrastructure, we're drilling from underground. By the time we complete the delineation program, complete the permitting, and then build it, it's actually the third one that we expect to come online. But while I say that, we also expect that this is going to be the highest grade of our three operations. So kind of building up to get to the best mine being third. And I think that's probably the best way to leave this presentation wise, is just to I got to highlight kind of our three key projects, and it's really the grade and the infrastructure that makes our company stand out.
Yeah, thank you for that little whirlwind tour. I'm going to try to follow up on a couple of things here, just for taking notes as you speak. I mean, first of all, I mean, any one of those projects would be something that a little microcap would be hanging their hat on and getting all over the news with trying to trumpet those results. I mean, the grade and the size and the grade that you have is impressive, I think, objectively, right? I mean, it's pretty exciting. 10 grams per ton underground mine, and you have, two or three of those. I guess this is, we're going to develop this as we go, as we transition out of talking about i-80 and just talking about, investing in general. But in terms of the Lassonde curve, I like that orphan period of development. That I find that that's my preference to just the wild west of pre-discovery exploration. I just think that there's too many, again, unknown unknowns, too many question marks, and not enough data to make meaningfully informed decisions as an investor. But when you get into where projects, I don't think necessarily i-80 is going to have much of an orphan period. It seems like you have quite a bit of interest, right? But that second armpit, I think, is where more meaningful knowledge can be applied, and more meaningful understanding of the mining process can help reveal to you superior choices in your investing, I suppose, right? I mean, you are already, as you mentioned, you're already producing. It's kind of a proof of concept production, but you're already mining precious metals, mining gold. Is that correct?
Yes, we're taking the development and the production scenario somewhat differently than a lot of companies do. I think we talked about it in our discussion yesterday, the day before, that we have seen failures of companies who have gone from explorer to producer. One recent one is Pure Gold in the Red Lake camp, who had what appeared to be a high grade project. They went underground, and it wasn't quite what they thought from the surface drilling. And another project in Nevada is First Majestic acquired the Jarrett Canyon mine from Sprott, and they recently announced that they shut it down. Mainly, there's some issues with deeper water that they hadn't properly dealt with. The grades are, I don't want to knock the project, but the grades are suspect at about 5-6 grams underground, which is fairly good grade, but not great grade. And it was quite deep. To get to where they were mining, it was a significant distance, because the mine has been in production on and off for decades. So from where you go underground to where you get to the deposits, a long ways away. So as we build out i-80, we had a big discussion internally about how do we ensure that we don't fail. And not failing is, when you do develop a mine, is making sure the mine works. So while we're producing some gold out of Granite Creek, we haven't yet announced a a formal production decision, so to speak. And that's because, as you said, we're doing proof of concept mining, and that's where we know we have a deposit. It's drilled from surface. It looks really good. We went underground. We started developing multiple zones. And one of those zones, we found the ground conditions were such that we likely can't mine it profitably. So we abandoned that part of the deposit and had to drive the decline deeper into what we call the OG zone. And we just mined the first full 2 levels out of that. And that allows us to do the reconciliation work, compare what we drilled from underground and what we modeled to what we actually mined, and how, and is it working, and are the ground conditions sufficient to mine. So we're doing this, but and proving that this mine will work before we make a formal decision. And next week, actually, we expect to have an update on that program. So our timing is kind of perfect. But it's really trying to make sure that we know what we're dealing with. We can do an economic scenario based on real data. This is the mining method we're going to use. This is the grade we're getting out of the mine project. Now let's put that in an economic model. Does that work for a long term to justify being an actual mining operation? So it is very different than what a lot of companies do. It's actually quite a bit more capital intensive up front, but it's less capital intensive at the back end because a lot of the infrastructure is already put in under the exploration phase. And but I do think that that's something that will ensure that i-80 makes a successful transition from explorer to developer to producer, whereas we've seen a lot of companies go bankrupt and go to zero on trying to do this. So really just trying to be really mindful of the fact that finding a mine is very difficult, permitting a mine is very difficult, and then building it and mining it is even more difficult. It's not an easy industry. And if you're going to be successful at doing it, like companies like Agnico or Kirkland Lake Gold, which was taken over by Agnico, even Agnico itself, they were companies who successfully started up operations and grew from there. And that's exactly the recipe we're trying to follow. Is what Agnico really, that's kind of our model company, is who do you want to be? For us, it would be, we want to be the quality of operator is what Agnico is.
I think you've articulated that well, and I want to talk about other advantages that i-80 has: infrastructure, location, permitting, all these things that you have that works to your benefit. But I think you're articulating this well right now, and maybe this is an opportunity just to ask you to continue with this. Right, this is again prior conversation we had. Not all developers are created equal, and there are better and worse, or more efficient and less efficient ways to develop a project and try to make it mine ready. Do you mind, maybe just as a chance to kind of simultaneously toot your own horn, but also maybe to provide some educational perspective here? Do you mind just kind of developing that further? Right, like what are you doing right? I suppose is maybe just a really blunt way to ask it, right? But I mean, what can you just continue on? And you've already been exploring this, but tell us more about what your process is in terms of its deliberateness, in terms of its intentionality, and why it helps to reduce risk.
I think one of the key things we do is we realize that mines are finite. So you can never stop exploring at a mine. Ultimately, mines end because you run out of ore. And if at that point, if you don't have another deposit waiting or have discovered something new or acquired something, your company will then go to zero because you don't have anything left. So it's always making sure that we're always drilling. And I think a lot of projects, when people develop them, they develop the projects with not enough understanding of what they're dealing with. One, maybe they didn't do enough drilling. So we see drilling the deposit, defining it properly as being a real key first step in making sure we succeed. Secondly, is where possible, putting in development and actually doing your test mining to, like I just said, ensuring that what we've drilled can actually be transitioned into something that can be profitably mined. Because like at Pure Gold, they found that the ore body was extremely erratic and they couldn't stay on the Madsen mine. They couldn't stay on the ore body. Rubicon, also in Red Lake, found that there's a lot of faulting, so difficult to follow the ore body. So really understanding it in great detail before you actually make the mine, I think is the key thing that we're trying to do that a lot of companies don't. And like I said, it's a bit more capital intensive up front, but it should lead to enhanced success in the future. And we're trying to build a company that we're saying in 4 or 5 years is going to be a mid-tier producer. So our market cap should be at that time billions compared to where it is today. As an example, we expect to be about the same size as Alamos. And Alamos Gold currently has a market cap of about 6 billion, where we're about 800 million Canadian. So I think there's significant upside as we grow and develop our company. But I think it's really to make this work. It's doing all the right work. And I'm not a mining engineer. I'm not a professional miner. I won't tell anybody that I'm the guy who's going to be successful at building a mine. But I have Matt Gilley and Andy Cole and Todd Esplin and people like that in our team, John Laird. These guys are very proven mine developers in the state of Nevada. And so they know the regulators, they know what ground conditions you might encounter as you go underground on these type of deposits. And they've successfully started and operated mines in the state. So it's really building out that team that is going to ensure or help to ensure that we are successful in the future. Really, it's not just one person, it's an entire team. It's having guys like a great CFO who can keep us on par. When do we need money? Where do we need money? Corporate development guys like Matt Golat, who works with me the most in kind of developing the company, who's very strong in his role. So it's really a team effort, and it goes right down to the people who answer the phone in the head office. They're like every person's important in our organization. But it is a tough industry. I'll use Greenstone as an example. We acquired the Greenstone, or what we called Hard Rock in Premier, from Barrick in 2007. It's in construction today, and it should be producing gold in 2024. So that's 17 years from first drilling to production. That's how difficult this industry is. And with the infrastructure we have in place, we expect to significantly shorten the timeline for us to achieve it from an example like that as Greenstone is.
Yeah, again, lots of great points you're making. It's one thing that I sometimes overlook to talk about, but I mean, management is absolutely crucial for me. I mean, betting on the jockey, I think, will do you better in the long run than not, I suppose. But the one thing I wanted to talk about, you talk about the sort of exhaustive approach you're doing in terms of your upfront knowledge and that upfront expenses. But there's a pithy comment from Rick Rule. He says that if you take away half my upside but get rid of all my downside, I'll take that deal every single time. And I think again that's that sort of attitude or mentality that people have to have in this sector, where those Casey at the bat, I guess, right? Those grand slam swings don't necessarily do you a lot of good, right? Having the data to actually make informed decisions is critical, is my point, right? I want to talk about, I mean, there's a kind of a little small laundry list here, right? I mean, lots of reasons why people should like i-80 story. I mean, permitting. I mean, the permitting infrastructure location is kind of what I have left. I would like to talk to you about. So you obviously already have quite a few permits in hand if you're already, proof of concept production is happening. So maybe you want to talk about where you are at the permitting process, but also maybe discuss why Nevada is friendly when it comes to permitting as well, in terms of the length of time it takes to achieve permits.
Well, our Granite Creek project is fully permitted. That's why we're doing the proof of concept mining. The declines are in. We're doing the ventilation. All the power's in the roads. So it's fully permitted. It was essentially fully permitted when we acquired it from Waterton. The Ruby Hill project is going through the permitting process right now. When we acquired the Ruby Hill project, the open pit was just finished being mined. So they just loaded the last of the material on the heap leach pad, and some of our production is from that residual leaching. and it's the underground deposit below that pit that is of our interest. So the previous owner didn't have an autoclave to process this refractory type material, and we acquired it to ensure that we can fill our facility. So, but we do have to get our permits to go underground, given we do have a mining permit for the property. It's an amendment to the current mining permit, so it should be pretty standard, take about 6-8 months to get that permit in place to go underground. Cove, we took through the permitting process in Premier, and we did build the underground as i-80. So that underground decline I showed was constructed by our company, and we're now drilling underground, getting what I think are some of the best results in all of United States in the drill program we're doing from underground right now. I urge people to take a look at our Cove press releases we've been putting out, because the grades and widths are just outstanding, and it's really got us buoyant at looking at our future. If that was a new discovery in the market by a company that just had that asset, their market cap would probably be bigger than ours. So we have these three projects, and Nevada is a state where I believe the state generates more tax income from mining than it does from casinos, though casinos in Nevada are better known. In fact, if Nevada were a country, I believe it would be the 5th largest gold producing country in the world. But it's really just a state in the United States. So it's a very pro mining state, which allows the permitting process to go ahead. And that's pretty unique, because there's a lot of states in the United States that have moratoriums against mining. So everybody likes what mining gives you: metal, lights, cutting, everything is made from mining, but it's like, don't do it here. Nevada is definitely not that. And it's such a favorable state for mining that it is consistently ranked #1 in the world jurisdiction. So permitting can be a big hurdle for projects. There are projects, I think Donlin is a good example, that has been trying to permit for well over a decade now. There's a lot of news you see about companies about, oh, we had a problem, our permit's being delayed because here's what we're doing. You constantly see that in the industry. Some places are much better than others. It took us at least 5 years to permit Greenstone from when we decided we wanted to build it. Canada can be quite difficult in many places now compared to previously. So permitting is one of the biggest, I think, risks in a mining company. Once you find a really good deposit, the next biggest hurdle is the two biggest hurdles from there are permitting and then financing risk. So those are the two main things that you have to look for after. And we think that the reason we operate only in Nevada as i-80 is because we want to make sure we're operating in a place that likes us working there. Every community we work in, essentially, the only reason there's a community there is because of the mining operations in the area. So working in a place like Nevada is as an executive of building a company, and having worked in Mexico and in Canada, and actually looked or been on boards with companies who are in even other countries, just seeing how favorable Nevada is compared to other countries just made us say that we're going to name our company after the highway that runs through all these mines in northern Nevada. And we're going to focus on deposits that are close to that highway I-80 and Interstate 80. So hence our name.
Yeah, again, lots that I'd love to talk about here. I mean, the one that maybe I will just to expand on is this, this permitting idea, and the barriers and roadblocks that go up, and and some of them are, I mean, would argue are necessary and defensible, but I think what happens is you have a North American population that, like you say, like relies so intimately and innately on mining in our kind of our modern world, but we know it's kind of like almost like a continental NIMBYism, right? That we don't really want to see that production happening in our backyard or in our country. But I mean, I argue passionately, and this is something that I talk about with my friends and my family, and they get, their eyes glaze over kind of thing, right? But I mean, you look at like nickel production in Indonesia is catastrophic, right? And then you look at, and I hope that, I mean, this is from a Canadian's perspective, they're talking about streamlining permitting and trying to make this go faster. And, like, we'll see how it goes, I guess, as it develops. But I mean, it seems like the government is trying to understand that we do need to see more efficiencies in that process. But I always talk to my people around me, look at what Indonesia is doing to extract nickel when Canada has massive nickel deposits, but there are all these barriers to actual production. But we also have the highest environmental and labor standards in the world. Do you want to see nickel that comes from an absolute catastrophe environmentally that is in Indonesia, or do you want to see it mined in a reasonable, responsible way where local stakeholders have a say in how production actually happens and benefits them, right? And so, I mean, I'm not sure if I have a question for you here, but I just think that it was a kind of a topic of conversation that is something that I talk about in my own time quite a bit as well. So,
yeah, definitely. We rely on it. We wouldn't be able to have this conversation if it wasn't for mining. My computer, your computer, all made from mining. The wires that light up your house, copper wire. And I think a lot of the permitting risks is created by NGOs, and I'm sure they have their place. There's people trying to protect pristine environments, which I believe is truly important. But if you have good regulations to mine, like Canada, the United States do, compared to Indonesia or China or Russia, who have much less regulations, you're actually getting a much safer or much more environmentally friendly product. And one thing that really bothers me is we as mining companies sometimes get aversion from various environmental groups, and if we ever have, and we've rarely had, fortunately, aversion to what we're doing, but if you do, or somebody's questioning what you're doing or complaining, I've met people in a restaurant who say, "Oh, you're mining, you're a terrible person," and I just say, "Look, show me one thing in this room that is not created by mining. You have a gold ring on. How do you think you have that gold ring?" The people, the NGOs who show up at companies' AGMs and stuff in Toronto or New York, wherever they may be, it's how did you guys get here? Did you walk? No, they came in a plane, took a taxi. So they're complaining about what they're using, but it is one of those risks, and being in places that favor what you're doing makes your job a lot easier to hopefully be successful at achieving the permit.
mm-hmm. And again, it's the necessity is obviously without question. I mean, I think any reasonable person understands intimately that, of course, I mean, we would be to the Stone Age and further back without it. It's the manner and the method with which the production occurs. And again, I think there's a huge point in terms of Western jurisdictions, Tier 1 jurisdictions, that's a huge advantage. I mean, this is of course sidestepping all these conversations around global geopolitics right now being a little bit iffy in terms of regional, the shrinking back into regions, right? I don't want to say Cold War 2.0, but that maybe we are starting to see the benefits of onshoring these things, right? So why don't I just take this as an opportunity to transition to maybe more of a macro chat here? I mean, just super boilerplate question here, but I mean, are you bullish, bearish, or neutral right now for general markets? We'll say initially, kind of in the short term or near term.
For the general market, I'd say I'm probably pretty bearish. The government's increasing of interest rates, I think when governments take this stance of going from, which they shouldn't have done, excessive easing for so long, free money for so long, had to come back to roost. It's a problem. You look at Canada with our Prime Minister and our Minister of Finance, they're trained as a teacher and a journalist. They're not economic people. I don't think they understand at all what it takes to really be a successful country. And I'm sorry to throw that political thing out, but it's very difficult to go from just giving away money to then all of a sudden tightening so fast, raising interest rates, which has had a temporary effect of propping up the US dollar, affected gold negatively, but gold's holding up extremely well in this environment. And that's because the macro background, I think, isn't there. There isn't the support for these raising interest rates. I just read that over now about 30% of buildings in Canada are empty. And that is increasing as companies can't afford to build because they just can't afford the interest rates. When people redo their mortgages and they can't afford their house in the housing market, they lose their homes or they have to give up their homes. All of that is still to come in my view. So I think that is going to really punish the market. You're going to see a place like Brookfield, who rely on full occupancy of their buildings, coming into some financial, I wouldn't say difficulties, but they're not going to be generating the profits they did before. People won't be buying their luxury cars as much as they were because loans and mortgages are so much more expensive. So this takes time to really dig in. People have a 5-year mortgage. They might not renew their mortgages for 2 years from now. So they won't really feel that pain for another 2 years. So I think this is going to be a lagging effect. And for that, I believe that the market's going down, and it's one of the primary reasons you own gold. It's a currency that has no political attachment. It trades all over the world, but it's not attached to any one country. There's no printing press. You just can't print gold and say, hey, here's more gold, everybody. So there's a lot of reasons that gold is a currency that should be held by people. It's a currency that's increased its buying power over the last 20 years, going from essentially $250 an ounce now to near 2,000. So it's steadily gone up over the last 2 decades to save your purchasing power. And if you look at the value of $100 bill and you take it, what did that buy you in 2000 compared to what that same $100 bill buys you today? That purchasing power is decreased significantly under our liberal government. We've seen housing prices double. We've seen food prices double. So just in the last 8 years, we've seen the purchasing power of our money, so to speak, cut in half. And in that same period, the gold price has increased in the last 8 years from probably around 1,300 to where it is today. So the purchasing power of gold has gone up, and that's why I think investors should own gold or gold stocks. And I think that's my big pitch for
there you go.
what I think about the market, but why I think gold price is going to go up. And as soon as the government starts to ease again, when they recognize, oh, maybe what we did with these interest rates was a little strong. We've already seen banks collapse. What's next to fall, especially if they continue to raise interest rates. And when that happens, I see gold. In my view, the gold price is going to go up at least 25% in the next 12 months. And the stocks will eventually catch a bid, because of late, people have been chasing the Teslas and the Apples. These companies trade at price earnings in the hundreds. And whereas mining companies trade at 5 times earnings, 6 times earnings. They're, I'd say, a much safer investment, but it doesn't have the same public euphoria that these tech stocks and now AI stocks do.
Just waiting for the cycle to return, right? Yeah, empires will rise and fall, but they're all built on gold, right? Isn't that the lesson from history, right? That gold is surprising in its constancy. So this is a good point. Yeah, another good transition here. I mean, yeah, gold has been flirting with all-time highs the last 3 years, right? It comes up and kind of kisses it, and then kind of recedes back down to a couple $100. But and so traditionally, the traditional knowledge, the traditional wisdom is that explorer developer stocks are kind of leveraged exposure to their underlying metal, right? Or that they should be, when things are good, they should be doing great, right? But that's not really what we're seeing right now, right? I mean, you have near all-time high prices in gold, but like you said yourself, right? Like what they're trading at is peanuts, right? That there are like deep discounts to companies that are just absolute money printers in terms of like their all-in sustaining cost versus the price of gold. That company and producers are doing credible, but they're not really seeing the market respond, or the market seems to kind of go ho hum. You have explorers who, I mean, in a healthier market, I mean, I've seen some wonderful assays. I mean, I'm thinking copper, nickel, not just gold right now, but get zero credit or zero permanent re-rating, just kind of a few days of interest, and it just sags back down. I mean, what the heck's going on here? Do you want to maybe try to discuss why that's happening, even though we're at all-time highs for gold?
I think it's really the narrative. I think a lot of gold companies and gold producers don't do a good enough job promoting ourselves
Hmm.
or promoting the commodity, the base. We don't get out there enough and explain to people why it's so important. I think, especially the younger generation, they I think they take it for granted that they've got lights and cars and gas. And cryptocurrencies took a bit away of I think, the thunder, people investing in another alternate currency other than gold. Um, but now we're seeing regulations being put on those, and I think, and they're going to come off, and cryptocurrencies aren't rare. You and I could get off this call and decide we're going to start a cryptocurrency. So anybody can make their own money if you want to own cryptocurrency, but not you and I can't just sit here, get off the phone, and say, "Hey, let's make gold." It's very difficult. So it's a currency that I think is highly underappreciated. Um, People who are just graduating university, they're not like the elder generation from Germany that saw their money go to zero.
Mhm.
So I think it's just it's us getting out there and talking about it. And another thing I think, even us that we do, because it's almost that the market's trying to make you do it, is always talk backwards gold. So you do a feasibility study. Well, we did ours at $1,650 an ounce, not at 1950. And it's like, well, why not? Gold's not trading at 1650, it's 1950. And by doing that, I think we're almost telegraphing that we as companies think that the gold price is going to go down. Whereas I believe the gold price is going up. But if I publish a feasibility study using $2,500 gold because I think it's going there, people say, "Oh, you're crazy." So I think it's the narrative. The narrative has to change. The spot price has been very strong in an environment when it shouldn't be, and all commodities. It's defending why you mine in Canada. It's defending why you mine in the United States. Your example of Indonesia is a great one. Look at some of the mines you see around the world, where you see thousands of people in a pit, and some of them are kids carrying out baskets of rock.
Yeah.
That's not allowed here in Canada. That's not allowed in the United States. So I think that it's promoting our industry. We can do this safely. We can do this in an environmentally friendly manner, and we do benefit society. And it's really making sure people understand what benefit we give to society.
That's well said. I think it is. To me, it seems so simple, and I don't come from a geology background, and I'm not, I'm not a family of miners. I come to this as someone who was not kind of steeped in it, but I guess that's where I started from. Is that step one, it's a necessity, and then you work backwards from there. Well, how do we do it in the most sustainable way? How do we do it in terms of best practice? And I just see clear advantages for tier one jurisdictions. And I think that, I mean, you make a good point there. It's almost as if the industry has a guilty conscience and is always kind of this like, yeah, but, or that kind of this having to almost apologize for what's happening. And I think like historically there are some tough stories historically, right, in terms of how mines conducted themselves. But this is the 21st century with 21st century labor laws and practices, and I think that sometimes there's a disconnect between what people think it is, or have an understanding of what it was, versus what it could be and should be if you have stakeholder interest and government support and a sincere pursuit of best practice, right? So, yeah, I think that your concept or your understanding of changing the narrative or trying to take control of the narrative, so not just apologetic almost, but that more of like trumpeting the actual benefits. I think it's a point well made. Yeah, no question there for you, I guess. Right?
Yeah, well, yeah. I'd say that we're proud of the projects that we've built. We, thankfully, we as a producing company from Premier to now i-80 have had an extremely strong safety record. Mines aren't actually the safest places to work in the world, but very, very stellar, really, safety record. I think, amongst mining companies in Nevada, we are the largest employer of women. So we are, we look at diversity in our workforce as a very important component. There's a lot of things that I think we can be proud of as a company, and when I find people who are anti-mining, my sister, I'd say, is one of those people who is, I wouldn't say totally pro-mining, but she understands it. She came from a mining family too. But there's a lot of people like that. There's people who think that we're horrible people because we mine, and it's explaining to them why we're not horrible people. We're actually good people, and we do a lot of good for society, and even a lot of medicine. Zinc is an important medicine. Using zinc in medicines is good for our health. So just helping people understand that it's not all bad. It's not all that big tailings dam failure. That doesn't happen regularly. Those are actually very rare occurrences. Deaths or are rare. Our standards on how we have emissions, like the autoclave that we're looking to restart, the rules have changed on what we have to do. Some of the changes we are going to be making to it are for environmental purposes, to capture more mercury, make sure we don't let any go into the environment. And it's really being strict on what you do. And if people understand the measures that mining companies often go through to actually build a mine and what they do to be safe and clean, it's actually can be one of the cleaner industries out there.
Yeah, no, and yeah, excellent. Just really interested in trying to respect your time here. I'll probably just try to transition to our final stage here. We haven't chatted about your autoclave. I mean, that's a huge get for me, and I always look at, do companies have, are they permit ready? Is it mill ready? Do they have infrastructure? And an autoclave for anybody who's not sure what that is, I think I would recommend you go read about them, because the fact that i-80 has one is a huge boon or a huge feather in their cap. But let's just, again, out of respect to the fact that this is, it's been a very fruitful conversation, but it's turning into a lengthy one here. So just a few minutes here, if you don't mind, Ewan, before I let you go, do you mind just kind of, I've got a couple of questions just around helping retail investors become better investors, right? I mean, I don't like it. Nobody likes losing their shirts. I don't think anybody in this market or in this sector is cheering for people to go broke. It is a widowmaker of a sector, right? It's a very challenging sector, but there's also obviously huge rewards to be had too if you can kind of master the chaos. And so obviously you're here representing a developer co, and this is something that I've talked about that I prefer in a lot of ways. Maybe do you want to talk about the core risks? Like how should investors be gauging developer cos in terms of what they're doing and if they're doing it properly?
Maybe I'll start with in exploration codes, because I think a lot of the retail investment community is looking for the next exploration, the next drill hole play.
Mm-hmm.
And those plays are more often than not, very short-lived. So there's a bit of euphoria. People are phoning, oh, you see this stock, you see that hole, the stock pops up, and then may prop up for a while as they drill a few holes. But then ultimately it becomes kind of like us. We release stellar holes regularly. And it's almost like, oh yeah, more good results out of i-80. So that becomes the attitude towards a company. But that Explorer Co. more often than not ultimately turns out that they didn't find something that's going to become an economic mine. So then goes to zero, or they have to find something else. So I like to buy drill hole plays now and then if I think I'm going to make a quick few dollars. But the majority of the shareholdings I own are in companies who have real resources. They're either in the permitting stage or have been permitted, so they're mining. Because you've reduced, when you're investing in mining, I think I'm reducing my risk as an investor, because I do play the stock market as well. I'm reducing my risk by picking companies who have real assets, who have the real ability to be a successful company, and ultimately, are they in a place that's going to allow it? I would say if somebody started drilling just outside New York City and got a permit to do it and hit something really good, people might say, look at that hole. And then you understood, well, it's 5 miles from downtown New York. It's never going to be a mine. It's just trying to find a place. Make sure you're investing in places that favor the industry, companies who have the ability to be real success. I think there's a lot more money to be made in our industry if you hold a stock for years than if you hold it for days. So finding the companies who have the ability to build out projects, and not just tooting our own horn. There's a lot of other good companies out there to invest in that are doing exactly what we're doing. Lundin Mining Gold. Lundin Gold is a recent example of a company who bought a project from Kinross and is now one of the, you know, stable names in our industry because they did such a good job at it. That's what we want to do with our company. So finding the Lundin Golds when they're in that earlier development stage, it was probably trading at $2. Now it's closer to 20. And so you see 10 times your money, but it took some time. But if you put your money in a bank account, not too long ago, you got zero, and now you're getting a little bit of interest. But so I think it's just investing in companies who have good people, operate in good jurisdictions, and have done a lot of work to show that we actually have something real here. And then I'll toot our horn, having an autoclave that is a very rare processing facility, because in Nevada, most of the gold mineralization, the easy oxide mineralization, is being mined out. And as the deposits go to depth, they turn the gold is encapsulated in sulfides. And you can't just put it through a normal mill and put cyanide on it and get your gold. You don't get it out. You have to cook the mineralization. And these type of facilities are viewed not to be the most environmentally friendly historically, even though, as I said, we're doing a lot of things so that ours will be essentially no pollution. But it would be difficult, if not impossible, to permit one of these facilities again in Nevada. So having one gives us a competitive advantage to be able to pursue deposits for hopefully decades, generations to come. I hope that i-80 is a big producer in Nevada. And so having that type of infrastructure is really key.
So management, jurisdiction, infrastructure, things that you're maybe pointing out. Do you have any red flags? Anything that when you're looking at a project that if you see that, you just kind of politely walk away?
For me, it's a lot of companies, when you see them release drill results, they'll have drilled 40 holes and they'll highlight 4 of them in the press release, but not talk about the other 36. For me, that's a big red flag, is your continuity isn't there. If you look at the history of i-80, we release every hole. So if we have a no significant value, we let you know that hole and no significant value, and hopefully we can explain why. But we release every hole, and we try to do it in succession. So we release hole 1 to 10, and we'll release all of them. And just to demonstrate, I think that just reading through what a company is doing, you can assess whether they're finding something that's continuous enough to maybe be a real deposit. So to me, that's one of the biggest red flags, is companies who highlight 1 or 2 holes, but drilled 20, 30. And it's like, what about the rest of them?
I can't help but ask, because this just reminds me. I mean, I get leery when I see a really bad grade smearing. That makes me a little leery. And also when they report predominantly in equivalent ounces, those are 2 not necessarily red flags, but things that make me kind of put my radar up. Is that same for you, or how do you feel about those 2 things?
Well, I'm okay with equivalent ounces, because your deposit could be almost half gold, half silver. And if you're a gold company, you want to highlight the gold. So saying that the silver in deposit X that I'm talking about is very important for it to being a mine, but you're not a silver company. And then I look at what we're doing at Ruby Hill. We have the Hilltop, Fad, Blackjack deposits. Those are actually base metal rich deposit. Probably the most valuable component of those deposits is lead and zinc. Silver is very important. Gold is probably number 3. Silver is number 4. But we're a gold company, and we want to mine that from the same underground infrastructure that we're mining the Ruby Deep's gold deposit. So it's almost having a base metal and a gold mine operating together. We expect to be doing that in the next 4 years. So how do we account for that deposit? It is a polymetallic deposit, but we're likely going to publish that resource showing how much lead, how much zinc, how much silver, how much gold, but then have a gold equivalent, because we're a gold company and we want to account for those as gold ounces, because the majority of the value isn't in gold in that specific deposit. So, but we want to show people that on a gold equivalent basis, we've grown our resource by hopefully X millions of ounces. So I'm not so against the gold equivalent. I think it has a place in the industry, but so But like you said, the grade smearing, if somebody hit 100 meters of a gram, but 1 meter ran 100 grams, it's like, well, that 1 meter had the gold and you smeared it across 100. Um, that to me is a big red flag. I'd say that, and lack of publishing what you actually drilled in your disclosure, to me, would be the two biggest red flags.
Excellent, and yeah, that's a point well made about gold equivalent. It certainly has its place. Just sometimes you'll see, polymetallic find with 5 different metals, but all of them are sub cutoff grade. But when you glue them all together, surprisingly, it looks great, right, in terms of gold equivalence. So, I just want jurisdiction. So I'm going to guess, based on your project history, that tier one jurisdictions or operating in reliable jurisdictions are important to you. Feel free to disagree, but do you care just to discuss that in general a bit?
Yeah, the ability to permit a mine is, to me, one of the, after the first big risk is being able to find and delineate what might be an economic deposit. They're very rare. Most projects fail. I'd say 99% of projects that get drilled ultimately fail. So the biggest risk is just actually finding a good deposit. The next one is permitting. So jurisdiction's key. Like I said, there are states that have moratoriums against mining. They may actually let you do some exploration, but they're never going to let you build a mine. So jurisdictional risk is big. Canada, it has become a very difficult place to permit because the government really doesn't support the industry enough. They allow there to be this sort of battle between mining companies and First Nations over land issues, but it's the government who allowed the mining company to explore this land. It's not, we didn't just say we're taking it. It's the government said, you can stake this land, you can do exploration, we're going to let you build a mine. But then next thing you know, you're dealing with another community or government, so to speak, that our government says, well, you guys deal with it. And it's like, well, I can't settle your land claim issues. That's between you and the First Nations, not between us. So finding a place that has less and less of those type of issues is good. And then, there are a lot of countries that you would go to, especially in Europe, that I would say a lot of European countries, it's don't even bother doing exploration because they'll never let you build a mine. So jurisdiction is key. Nevada, like I said, is consistently ranked #1. If you drive from Reno to Salt Lake City along Interstate 80, it is pretty rare that you won't look out your window and see a mine or an old mine. So it's a very favorable place. And when in a mining company cycle, you mentioned the song curve, you go from exploration success, then it's the developer phase. The longer it takes to permit, the longer you're going to stay in that downtrend. And then you've got to build it. So I'd say if you're looking at a long-term investing company, you should look at one that really either in the exploration phase, almost sell it in the exploration phase. And then if it is actually saying, well, now we're going to go through all the stuff to do feasibilities and we're going to build infrastructure, but we have to permit it. I'd say for me, that would be a time when that investment's likely to go down. And then it's when you do have permits and you are building, that's when your investment will go back up. So I agree with those two curves in the cycle, even though we're not seeing that big up curve lately, because as we talked about, there hasn't been this big euphoria towards mining, but really finding the companies who are in the right places with especially with permits is very important if they actually have a deposit. And I'm pretty proud to say that we have 4 really good deposits in Nevada. All of them are either fully permitted or most of the way through permitting. We have the ability to go underground. We are processing material on either our heap leach pads or with Nevada Gold Mines, soon looking to start up our own autoclave. So I think we've pieced together a company that is very unique in our industry and I think still underappreciated. And hopefully being on shows like yours helps people understand why i-80 should be a cornerstone investment in their portfolio.
Well, you've articulated your discussion well here, and I appreciate you're a man of a lot of strong thinking and a lot of. I've really enjoyed our conversation here today. I honestly, I think you've probably taken me to the end here. You kind of snuck up on me here. Uh, I think you did just kind of encapsulate the whole thing. A little nice little capstone conversation there. But final thought, opportunity for final thoughts from you.
Um, yeah, I'd say that um, I'm a big investor in mining companies. I think that people should really look at the macro environment of what's going on governmentally, especially in North America right now, and decide, do I really want to own these 600 times multiple companies, or should I look for an investment? And with the current policies that are being pushed, it's getting more difficult to be successful in almost any industry. So I really think that people should really take another look at why gold or copper or zinc or lead or nickel or uranium should be an important investment if they are going to be investing, not just putting your money in the bank. And you don't necessarily need to hire a fund who's just going to play your money back and forth, and if
Mm-hmm.
the market goes up, it goes up. If the market goes down, it goes down. Is look for companies who do have big inherent value and have the potential to have long-term success. Agnico, back when they started building out their operations, were trading at 350 Canadian a share. Today they're trading at 60. And they did that because they successfully built and transitioned from an explorer to a producer. Lundin Gold is a recent example I just gave you. And hopefully find companies that are successful at making that transition, making the right decision on that company as a good deposit. That should be economic. They can get their permits. They are going to build out, because those are the companies that over several years are going to result in multiplying your money, not just adding 10%.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's looking at companies that have that ability, and I believe we are one of those. And so I think i-80 should be looked at as an investment. I'm not saying buy it if you have to buy it, but I think for a long-term vision of a company, there are very few like us who have the quality of assets and the quality of jurisdiction with infrastructure.
Well, Ewan, yeah, well said again. I mean, you are a strong advocate and a strong spokesperson for this industry, and I thank you for that. And i-80 Gold, I think everybody, as you've mentioned, it's a very compelling project, very very compelling economics, and in a nice, appropriate spot for investing. That's i80gold.com, i80gold.com. Ewan, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Perfect. Have a good day.
You too.